If you are so opposed to the energy that we produced in Alberta, then why are you so keen on taking the money generated by the oil field workers in this province and across Western Canada? You cannot have your cake and eat it too. Pick a lane.
West versus East. That's Alberta Premier Jason Kenney with a stern message for the Bloc Québécois leader this week after Yves-François Blanchet accused the West of trying to create an oil state. Kenney said, support a pipeline or stop taking our money. Tweaked by the Bloc, struggling with an economic downturn, a very serious one. Jason Kenney and Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe keep raising the issue of prairie alienation. But is all this really leading to a Canada with a unity crisis? Is the country really more fractured than ever, as Andrew Scheer has said? And how should Mr. Trudeau handle it all? Let's find out. Joining me now is the former Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne. She is in Toronto, and the former Conservative Minister James Moore is with us from Vancouver. Great to see both of you. I'll start out west with Mr. Moore. What do you think about this war of words between Blanchet and Kenney, and where this is all leading?
Well, look, I think Jason Kenney has a mandate as the Premier of Alberta to defend Alberta. And what I think is particularly obnoxious with what Mr. Blanchet said is that it's one thing for him to assert, with 32 seats out of 78, by the way, in the province of Quebec, that he is a dominant voice in Quebec, in Quebec's place in Confederation. That's fine. So if they want to assert that the Energy East pipeline shouldn't happen, that's fine. If he wants to assert that in Parliament he's going to pursue a national carbon tax with some carve-out for Quebec so they get some money, that's fine, that's his perspective. But when he goes further and says that he will not support any pipelines being built to the west of Canada, to the north of Canada, or to the south of Canada into the United States, where he's actually wants to use his capacity in the Parliament of Canada to obstruct Alberta's economic growth in a way that has nothing to do with the province of Quebec, then I think Jason Kenney is absolutely right to get up and stand up and defend Alberta's interests, particularly this week when it was pointed out that Quebec received $12 billion in equalization from the government of Canada while running a $4 billion surplus, while at the same time Minister Schweitzer, the Attorney General in the province of Alberta, is doing a rural crime tour, and he's finding out that the consequences of the economic downturn and the lack of growth in the energy sector is having real consequences on crime, the expansion of the opioid crisis that's happening in communities and rural poverty. There are real problems that Jason is trying to assert, and to be offended by a Bloc leader saying you can't expand west, forget Quebec, is something that Jason should absolutely push back against.
Well, it certainly is. I should say, of course, that the Harper government with Jason Kenney in it were the one that negotiated that equalization structure that he doesn't like right now. But Kathleen, what do you make of this? I mean, this language is very hot stuff, this rhetoric. What do you make of it all?
Well, it is so inflammatory, and I think there's lots of obnoxious to go around, if we want to use that word, It really worries me. Is the country more divided than it's ever been? I don't think so. What I do know is that, and I was actually with former Premier Notley the other night, and the reality is that people in Alberta are hurting. I know that. We know that. We know that the recovery has not happened, that their economy is very challenged. We get that. But I think the question has to be, in the long run, are we better hanging together? And do we have that conversation? Or do we continue to fan the flames of, some kind of illusory separation or even stronger, more autonomy? I don't know the answer to that. My position would be we are better off if we can find a way to work together. The collapse of the cod fishery in Newfoundland was a huge blow, and I know that is a compelling argument when we look at how this country has been able to hang together and that we are better off. So I would say to Mr. Kenney, is there some other reason that it's in your best interest to fan these flames, or is it really just about getting to a place where you can have a reasonable conversation with the rest of the country?
James, just gauge this stuff for me, because like Jason Kenney's talking about, we want in Alberta our own pension plan, we need to change equalization. I get a lot of that stuff. I know he's got an austerity budget there as well, but how realistic are these? I'm not suggesting alienation is not realistic or anger is not realistic. How realistic is this, quote, go it alone stuff that he's throwing out there?
Well, look, obviously there's going to be this panel who's going to assess and report back in the spring, but with respect, I don't recall when the cod fishery collapsed, people saying to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, just calm down. You're being too hot with your rhetoric. Quebec after the 95 referendum, just calm down. You're being too hot with your rhetoric. Ontarians with the threat of collapse of the auto sector and the rest of Canada put in hundreds of millions of dollars in corporate welfare to sustain a critical industry. But they were angry about it, and people didn't say, Ontario, just sit down and just cool your jets a little bit. But we do say that to Alberta and Saskatchewan.
Well, nobody said
it's
anything.
It's not appropriate. And look, look with Kathleen, Jason is a federalist, and he does believe, like I do, you do, I think all of us do, that that Canada, the sum is absolutely larger and more powerful and better than its constituent parts.
Right.
However, it doesn't mean that you just sit tight with the status quo. And what Jason's trying to do is to get ahead of this rising anger in the West. And it's not just rising anger about the status quo of substantive policies, but frankly, the insult that's layered on top of it, of course, with, frankly, Justin Trudeau getting elected by saying, if he's elected Prime Minister, you Quebecers, you need to elect me, he says only in French, in order to stand up to Alberta and the oil industry. He did that. So there's a layer of not only antagonism, but a sense that if with Justin Trudeau getting reelected, nothing will change, and it's on the mandate and responsibility of the Prime Minister of this country to ensure that he walks that back substantively so Albertans feel at home in Canada.
All right, how does he do that? Kathleen, we respond to that, because what does he do? Is it just a matter of getting the Trans Mountain pipeline built and that lowers the temperature a bit, or what's your sense of this?
You know what? I don't know what the specific tactic is, other than there obviously has to be an acknowledgement on the part of the government, which there will be. There absolutely will be, that the solutions for Alberta's economy have to be rooted in the ability of Alberta to get its resources to Tidewater. How does that happen? How does that economy survive the transition that we're in? Because we are in a transition. And James, I know you know that, and I know that Jason Kenney knows that. It's very tough. The Alberta economy is not as diversified as it needs to be. That's a reality, just like Newfoundland's wasn't as diversified as it needed to be. And so there has to be a supported solution. But that's only going to happen if the rhetoric can calm down. And to be fair, James, as the auto sector collapsed in Ontario, we had a different situation, a different economy, but there was not angry, heated rhetoric blaming other parts of the country. That's not how it rolled out, nor is it the way it would have. It's going to find a solution with Alberta. So I think there has to be a step back from that language.
Okay, I got 10 seconds. James, just a lot of people are saying this about the divisiveness. Just real quick, are we in a national unity crisis yet? Yes or no?
No. You look at the conscription crisis, the Quiet Revolution, the 80 referendum, the 95 referendum, but we have real divisions. They've been there since 1867. They endure, and the responsibility of the Prime Minister of Canada is to bring Canadians together.
That'll be the challenge when he puts together a new cabinet next week, and this coming week, rather. Kathleen Wynne and James Moore, great to have both of you on a very consequential issue facing the country right now.